So this one here, I can't really see it. Sometimes when you tap them, it's not showing, you get a cloud of pollen coming off. And so these are hazel catkins. And this year they're actually really weirdly early. They're usually early anyway. They usually come out in February time, but they've been like these ones came out mid-January, which is unusually early. But
it was quite warm.
Yeah.
Hazel's good for bow and arrows, isn't it?
Yeah.
What we do?
Where was that? You tap them and you'll often see, like, especially in February, you'll see this cloud of pollen coming off. And another thing to look out for as well is actually so that's the male flowers again giving off the pollen. But I don't know if they'll be out yet, but you can sometimes find the female flowers. And they're really hard to spot. They're tiny little kind of reddish, oh here we go. Oh no, that's not what I thought it was. They look like some little sea creature or something. It's just like a little red kind of sea anemone type thing, but absolutely tiny. And they might not...
Are you looking for the wee red seeds?
Not seeds, so it's like a little tiny female flower. And it... Can you find one?
Is that one here?
We will like go back quite far into history and even look at old buildings and look at the timbers in old buildings going back hundreds of years, and they'll be able to match that up with particular exact years, like, so they could say 1577 it was a brilliant summer and all of that, and they can compare it with historical records, but then they can kind of overlap these going back, and you can go back really far, sometimes thousands of years, and get that kind of information. But just a really cool thing, you can't come across a tree stump or whatever, ring counting, brilliant, and then looking at the gaps and seeing what different seasons are like. And especially if it's really recent, and you can actually compare it, you can remember, like, oh, actually 3 years ago or whatever, it was a really wet summer or whatever. So yeah, it's really interesting. So hazel here, when we're looking at identification of hazel, what would you say about its growth form, like the shape or structure of the tree?
Quite short and all kind of moving.
Yeah, lots of stems coming from low down. But technically it's more of a shrub. Some things can grow as a shrub or a tree, and often a tree is defined as something that has like a single woody stem going to, it's a bit arbitrary, but going to whatever 2 meters or something before it splits, or 3 meters. Everyone knows what a tree is, but that's the usual structure. Shrubs tend to have more kind of growth from the bottom, but there's certain trees which, if you cut them back, will just grow in a shrubby way. Hazel naturally grows as a shrub anyway. Sometimes you get a single stemmed hazel, but it's usually a shrub. So yeah, lots of stems coming up. This time of year, even though we don't have the leaves, these really stunning catkins are great ID features. Hear that bird? So that's a great tip. And they have variations on that. See, the picture is this one. Here's the Puplett. And the classic great tip song, people think it sounds like, and it does, it sounds like teacher, 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 teacher. And then it does variations, it does like a kind of funky riff on it, like yeah. So that's a great tip. And just stunning birds, and they start singing really early, often before Christmas they've just started singing. So yeah, keep an ear out for them.
I think that was the interesting thing about COVID.
Yeah, we could go through that whole process we did before, but just in the interest of time, when we did the process of like who it possibly was, potential culprits. But the two that I'd kind of narrow it down to most quickly would be badger and rabbit, and they both make quite similar kinds of sign. And with rabbit, which we do have a lot of around here, they'll really often dig these kind of scrapes, like it's a little scrape with a mound behind it. And they do that partly as sometimes for feeding, but mostly as a kind of territorial marking. So almost always, if it's a rabbit, you'll find some droppings on there, some like rabbit poo. And here, I don't see any on there. And also the shape is kind of, there's things about the shape which is slightly different. The way this has been done, it looks kind of pressed open at the sides a bit here, and it goes into like a cone shape at the bottom. And with a rabbit, it's usually a kind of a trench with parallel sides. This goes into, like, if you imagine a badger's snout pushing into the ground. And so these are called snuffle holes. So it's like what badgers do and it's common to find them on this kind of rich grassland where there's a lot of earthworm. And badgers, amazingly, you were saying before about how they're omnivores, so they'll eat a ton of different stuff. But over half of their diet, a lot of the time, is earthworms. They eat absolutely tons of them. So they love like scrabbling around in places like this, sticking their noses in and sucking out the earthworm. And sometimes if you look in the bottom, you can even see the little hole where the earthworm was like trying to get away but didn't. So yeah, so keep an eye out for those, and you might find other signs as well. Yeah, so you see it's not that big at all. You see it, it's like really...
I don't understand it. A mole goes in there.
I don't understand. The mole was in there.
Which bit don't you understand?
Oh, a wee mole, it's a wee mole. I'm thinking something else now. But I
Oh, okay.
understand it. I was thinking something big.
Oh, okay,
But
yeah.
I'm not a mole.
Well,
Small.
yeah. So they're pretty small, and there'll be a
I don't know
long.
why I was thinking the big thing.
So there'll be a tunnel kind of going along here
Yeah.
to under
Do they
there.
live underground then?
They do, yeah, like probably 99% of the time. Occasionally you see them above the ground, but most
I
of the
knew
time.
they were kind of like...
So it could be under there right now. And they do.
So we can
Funny
walk
enough, they
on
can see. They've got tiny eyes. They can see, but mostly just light and stuff, so they can come up and they can see it's light. They haven't got great eyesight. The sense of smell.
What
is
attracts them to come up? Do you know?
Breathing.
Don't know.
Oh,
Actually,
99% down
they'll-
there, I don't need to worry about
they
breathing.
will come up sometimes to go to new areas or like during mating season to find a mate.
Okay.
They'll also
Love.
probably if it's really wet, if it's raining a lot or whatever, and the ground's saturated, they might come up to then get over ground to go to another place. And I don't know actually how much they forage on the surface. They might do. I don't know. That mostly they're doing it in their tunnels.
Okay.
But yeah, do occasionally see them coming up. Sometimes I've seen them out just they get stuck over sort of along a road not far from here, where it was actually on the edge of the road. I was driving along, saw this mole that was just right at the edge of the road, and it kind of fallen. There was a grassy bank, and it had just fallen down onto the road, and it just couldn't dig away. So I jumped out and chucked it back on the bank, and then it could just like dig back down. But so sometimes they're just stuck and they can't get down.
Are moles and voles similar? That I should
No,
have
I'll show you pictures actually. They're quite different in that. Let's see.
Badgers know that it's quite rich pickings if there's lots of molehills. Do you know what I mean? Because if the moles
The badgers eat them?
No, I mean
They probably would
moles
sometimes.
if the moles know that there's lots of earthworms here, then the badgers are maybe seeing all the molehills and thinking, well, the mole's getting a feed there, maybe I'll
Oh, okay.